Once, I worked as a night guard at an old prison. The prison had a dark history, known for its gallows where many criminals had been executed. The gallows were no longer used, but they still stood in the courtyard, a grim reminder of the past. One cold winter night, I was doing my rounds. The prison was quiet, and most of the inmates were asleep. As I passed by the courtyard, I felt a chill in the air, colder than usual. I glanced at the gallows and shivered. Something about them always gave me the creeps. I continued my patrol, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Every time I walked past the courtyard, I felt eyes on me. I tried to ignore it and focus on my duties. Around midnight, the power went out. The prison was plunged into darkness, and my flashlight was my only source of light. I radioed for help, but the other guards were busy trying to restore the power. I had to check the courtyard and make sure everything was secure. I stepped into the courtyard, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The gallows loomed ahead, casting long shadows. As I approached, I heard a faint creaking sound, like wood bending under weight. My heart started to race. I shone my flashlight on the gallows and froze. The noose was swaying gently, as if someone had just been hanged, but there was no one there. The rope moved on its own, creaking in the silent night. I backed away slowly, trying to calm my nerves. Then, I heard a whisper. It was so soft, I almost didn't catch it. "Help me," the voice said. I spun around, but no one was there. The courtyard was empty. The whisper came again, louder this time. "Help me." It was coming from the gallows. My flashlight flickered, and I saw a ghostly figure standing on the platform. It was a man, his face pale and eyes hollow. He wore old prison clothes and a noose hung around his neck. "Please," he whispered, reaching out to me. "Help me." I was frozen with fear, unable to move or speak. The ghost stepped off the platform, but instead of falling, he floated towards me. His eyes were filled with sorrow and pain. "I was innocent," he said, "executed for a crime I didn't commit. You must help me find peace." I finally found my voice. "How can I help you?" "Tell the world my story," he replied. "Prove my innocence." The power suddenly came back on, and the ghost vanished. I stood there, shaken, trying to process what had just happened. I knew I had to do something. The next day, I started researching the prison's history. I found records of an inmate named Thomas who had been executed 50 years ago. He had always claimed he was innocent, but no one believed him. I dug deeper, finding old newspaper articles and court records. It took months, but I finally uncovered new evidence that proved Thomas was telling the truth. He had been wrongly accused and executed for a crime he didn't commit. I contacted the authorities and shared my findings. In the process, Thomas was posthumously exonerated. His name was cleared, and his story was told. The night after the announcement, I was back on duty. As I passed the courtyard, I felt a sense of peace. I glanced at the gallows and saw a faint, ghostly figure. It was Thomas, smiling at me. He nodded, then slowly faded away. The prison felt different after that night. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the gallows no longer felt haunted. I knew Thomas had found peace, and I had played a part in it. The memory of that night stayed with me, a reminder of the injustice that can happen and the ghosts that remain until their stories are told. It was supposed to be an exciting weekend of camping. My friends and I had planned the trip for weeks, choosing a remote spot deep in the woods, away from the hustle and bustle of everyday life. The forest we chose was known for its beauty, but also for the eerie tales surrounding it. They called it the Haunted Forest, but we were skeptical and eager for adventure. We arrived in the late afternoon, set up our tents, and gathered around a campfire. The sun was setting, casting long shadows among the trees. We cooked dinner, laughed, and told stories. As night fell, the forest became a dark, silent entity, broken only by the crackling of our fire and the occasional rustle of leaves. Feeling brave, one of my friends, Jake, suggested we share ghost stories. We agreed, trying to outdo each other with tales of terror. When it was my turn, I recounted the legend of the haunted forest. Years ago, I began, a young couple went camping here. They were never seen again. Some say their spirits still wander the forest, seeking help, but those who encounter them are never the same. The group laughed nervously, but a sense of unease settled over us. The fire flickered, casting dancing shadows around our campsite. We decided to call it a night and retreated to our tents. I had trouble falling asleep. The sounds of the forest seemed amplified in the darkness. Twigs snapping, leaves rustling, and an occasional distant owl hooting kept me on edge. I finally drifted off, only to be awakened by a soft whispering sound. At first I thought it was one of my friends, but the whispers grew louder and seemed to come from all around. I unzipped my tent and peeked out. The campfire had died down to glowing embers, and the forest was pitch black. I saw movement near the edge of our campsite, a shadowy figure slipping between the trees. My heart raced. I called out softly, "Jake? Sarah, is that you?" There was no response. I grabbed my flashlight and shone it towards the trees. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but dense forest. The whispering continued, more insistent now, like voices just out of earshot. I woke Jake and Sarah, explaining what I had seen and heard. They groggily followed me out of their tents, and we stood together, listening. The whispers seemed to come closer, surrounding us. Jake, always the brave one, suggested we investigate. Armed with flashlights, we ventured into the forest. The trees closed in around us, their branches like skeletal hands reaching out. The whispering grew louder, more urgent. My flashlight flickered and I felt a chill run down my spine. We stumbled upon a clearing, and in the center stood an old, decrepit cabin. It looked abandoned, with broken windows and a sagging roof. The whispers seemed to be coming from inside. Against my better judgment, we approached the cabin. The door creaked open with a nudge from Jake. We stepped inside, our flashlights revealing dusty furniture and cobwebs. The whispers were louder now, almost as if they were in the room with us. We explored the cabin, finding nothing but decay and darkness. Suddenly, Sarah screamed. We turned to see her staring at a mirror on the wall. Reflected in the glass were not just our faces, but the faint outlines of two other figures, their expressions sad and pleading. We ran out of the cabin, through the forest, and back to our campsite. The whispers followed us, growing fainter as we reached the safety of our tents. We huddled together, too scared to sleep, waiting for the first light of dawn. When morning finally came, we packed up and left the haunted forest as quickly as we could. The memory of those whispers and the figures in the mirror haunted us. We never spoke of that night again, but the forest left a mark on us, a reminder of the unseen horrors that lurk just beyond the edge of the light.